What's up everybody, this is Danny, and today let's compare the iPhone 13 to the brand new iPhone 14. Of course, my iPhone 14 Pro and 14 Pro Max videos are coming soon, so make sure you subscribe so you don't miss those. The iPhone 13 and 14 look very similar, but there are some changes that you might want to know about. And of course, I'm going to give you that camera comparison that you've been waiting for to see if the iPhone 14 camera is worth upgrading to, but first, the unboxing. The biggest changes to the non-Pro models is now there is a bigger iPhone 14 Plus. So you get the same specs as the iPhone 14 and you get a bigger display and a bigger battery for just $100 more. So if you don't want to go Pro, this is a good choice. But that is dropping next month, so I'll cover that when it's available. So let's go ahead and start with all of the similarities. You get the same size display at 6.1 inches with a 60 Hz refresh rate. You get the A15 Bionic on both, so it's plenty fast for anything that you need, but I believe the 14 has the A15 Bionic from the 13 Pro models from last year, so it's a little bit faster, especially on the GPU. The iPhone 14 gets new sensors to enable the crash detection feature, which automatically calls emergency services when it detects that you're in a car crash. And you also get that neat satellite SOS feature, where if you're in a place with no cellular service, you can point at the sky and send an emergency text, so I can see this saving some lives. And this next difference might be controversial, but in certain countries like the United States, there is no longer a SIM tray. It'll be all done electronically with eSIM. And both of the cameras also get an upgrade, so we will get to that in just a second. Besides that, you're essentially looking at a very similar phone, and what's great is if you don't care about those new features, Apple will continue to sell the iPhone 13 for a discount. If you want the smallest iPhone that you can buy, you will need to get the iPhone 13 mini for $599. There is no iPhone 14 mini this year. Looks like that has been discontinued this year, so RIP to the mini. You will be missed. iOS 16 is there for both phones, so you will get all the improvements like the customizable lock screen, the battery percentage comeback, the editable messages in iMessage, the haptic feedback on the keyboard, and there are so many more features. There are a ton of videos already out on iOS 16, so I will leave a few linked down below that I like, but if you want me to do a dedicated video, especially maybe a long-term thing with iOS 16, I will definitely do that. But I wanted to spend the bulk of this video on the question that I know that you all have. Is the iPhone 14 cameras worth upgrading to? Well, let's find out right now. What's up everybody, this is Danny, and today I'm going to do the camera comparison between the iPhone 13 and the iPhone 14. So right now you're looking at cinematic video, but 4K on the iPhone 14, which is great. And what I'm going to do is see if the iPhone 14 is worth upgrading to if you already have an iPhone 13. So let's test these out in every condition and see what's improved. Let's do it. So let's start with the daytime pictures, and just as you would have guessed, they both look extremely similar. Most flagship phones take excellent photos during the day, so this is no different with the iPhone 13 and the iPhone 14. The iPhone 13 was already great at daytime photos, so nothing has changed. Fantastic dynamic range with lots of details, so the best way for me to describe the changes in the daylight are incremental. While they might not be drastic, you will notice some processing changes and color improvements like you see here in the sky. If you aren't looking close, you won't see major differences that are instantly noticeable, but take a look at here. When you zoom in, look at the difference in the detail pickup. I'm assuming that this is from the new photonic engine that is used on the iPhone 14 processing. I can imagine that improvements in detail will set in after you use the iPhone 14 for a while, and you can see here in the road where the textures are more accentuated. And I know this isn't something that is noticeable right away, but more detail is always something that I won't complain about. In portrait mode pictures, you can see that the blurred background is a little bit sharper with a similar amount of bokeh applied, and the human subjects are also a tad more defined, so in everyday pictures, this is all about the fine details. The better highlight control here on my wife's white dress. The more natural approach when it comes to bright colors, you can see that the bike color remains the same while the wall is more accurately captured. The best example can be shown like this, since the iPhone 13 or 14 doesn't have a telephoto. When you push both of these phones to 5x digital zoom, you can see just how much better the iPhone 14 is. This shows you what the processing is doing with the new phone, so that is very impressive in my opinion. But I'm going to play devil's advocate here too. If you're upgrading just for the camera alone for daytime shots, you can see that most of the pictures look very similar. You may even say that the less contrasty processing of the iPhone 13 produces some brighter pictures in some scenarios. For those who like brighter skin tones might also like the iPhone 13 better as well. So if you're happy with your iPhone 13 camera and you shoot primarily during the day, then you probably are good to stick with it for another year. But I wanted to show you that the camera is picking up more detail even without a bump in resolutions like on the Pro models. You can see that heavily cropping into the shot of the Celebration Hotel. Look at the roof. This difference looks like it could be just a result of more aggressive sharpening, so I wanted to test it again in a picture that wasn't as far from across the lake, and look at this when it's punched in. It does look more sharpened again, but it is really picking up on the streaking that is happening on the roof, so consistently this is what you can expect if you decide to upgrade. This is taken with the ultra wide from the exact same distance, so you can get a scale of the scene. I really like the way this looks, but the processing is the same with this lens too, so that photonic engine seems to show some improvement across the board. Again, in most cases, I'm seeing an improvement in the overall picture. This is a complex lighting scenario, and you can see the better highlight control on my kids' faces, and that extra color bump is also nice to match the scene. Just a more refined capture on the iPhone 14 here on my wife, better white balance, better skin tone, and way more detail on her shirt. I even saw instances of better dynamic range as well, and you can see here in the sky. So these are the details that you will get to appreciate over time as you take more pictures with the iPhone 14. And even though that the skin is brighter again on the iPhone 13, that will be personal preference, the new front-facing camera does pick up more detail on my skin, and it is also sharper. So take a look at my chin. It's picking up more of my forehead wrinkles, so I'm not sure if that's a good thing. But I'm glad to see a better front-facing camera with autofocus this year. I think you will like it. That bigger sensor though does show one disadvantage, and that is the minimum focusing distance. The iPhone 13 can get a little closer with better clarity at these distances, so you'll have to back up slightly to get similar shots with the iPhone 14. This is a great example. See how much closer that I was physically able to get with the 13? What I would love to see is a macro mode in the future. That would be a great addition to the non-Pro lineup. The 4K video is great on both, and you can shoot up to 4K 60 frames per second. This is still the best video in the business, so you'll be happy on both of them with daily capture. But two noticeable differences on video this year. If you have kids, then you know trying to capture your kids having fun and actually getting stable footage is a challenge, so it usually looks like this, right? It's usually super shaky and unusable, but the new action mode will help you capture footage like this. Just turn it on, it will crop slightly, and look at the difference. It is so smooth on the iPhone 14. This was my son's 4th or 5th attempt in this in the super hot weather, so props to the little guy. Here is a more dramatic test of me actually running down the stairs. This is an awesome option to have on the iPhone, especially for people who capture a ton of action like skateboarding. Just know that this works best in well-lit conditions, because if you get into indoor and nighttime situations, the quality can take a hit. For fans of cinematic video, you do get 4K capture this year, a bump up from 1080p, and you also get a 24 frames per second option. This is a big deal in my opinion, because it's now so much easier to use this footage into projects. It might be difficult to see in this smaller scale on the video, but the video is much sharper all around, and the stabilization during video mode is also great, as you can see. When looking at the nighttime pictures, this pretty much mirrors what we are seeing during the day, so I appreciate the consistency. You can see under some scenarios, especially in mixed lighting, the results are very similar, so it all depends on the conditions. Apple did claim that the performance could be more than doubled on the main camera in low light, and while I'm not seeing that number in overall brightness, I am seeing it on the detail. Look at how much more of the grass is being picked up here. There's less artifacting too, with less noise, so this is a nice increase. Here's a shot without night mode. They both look very similar, so it's hard to tell a difference right away, but here it is with auto night mode settings, and it's slightly brighter on the iPhone 14, but the improvements again are in the details. Take a look at the concrete next to it. You can see more of the porous texture, and the overall shadow details are retained in the entire scene, which is nice. That extra light from the bigger sensor will most likely to get you a little brighter sky detail. As you can see here, it's not a huge difference, but I appreciate it. And that all comes with extra detail again. Look at the tree here, and also less noise overall, so these refinements should get you a better overall nighttime photo. Here is that brighter sky again like I saw in the last photo, so in these type of scenarios, this is what you can expect. But when you step into super dark conditions like this, I can see the improvements right away with less noise all around. And when you punch in, you can see that noise difference more clearly, and you can see the improvements in the building as well. And on the other elements like the trees and lighting, less flare. So while improvements like this might not smack you in the face right away, it's the finer details that will make the overall picture better. If you look, there's a definite change in the noise reduction algorithm. It just depends on if you like it or not. And the best part is that your night mode shots will take a little less to get. Here in this one, I was able to get the same shot a second less than the iPhone 13, and it doesn't seem like much, but it adds up over time, especially if you're taking a lot of pictures at night. If you are a wide angle shooter at night, then I'm glad to say that the wide angle did get an improvement this year. Apple is saying 2x on the performance, and again, that 2x, I didn't see it on the brightness, but where I did see it is in the details. Look at how much clearer the building is and the writing is, and also look at here on the roof, what a difference. The improvements in mixed lighting wasn't as drastic, but I'm glad to see there's a better ultra wide on the iPhone 14, and also the new front facing camera, I'm seeing better low light performance, better white balance and skin tone, so I'm happy to see this. Look at my skin texture here in this selfie, and the detail on my shirt is better, and I think that has to do with the autofocus, I'm assuming. So if you want to see a dedicated video on selfies, let me know and I will get to work. So let's end it with video. I'm seeing a slight improvement to dynamic range. I'm showing my age a bit, but I checked out this Hoobastank concert the other night with this drastic light condition, and you can see that the iPhone 14 is handling the lighting better overall. I love testing low light performance with fireworks. The changes in exposure and colors are tricky for smartphone cameras, and I like to use an example of what people would use the nighttime recording for, especially if they're on vacation or traveling. The video performance under these conditions with the main camera looks super similar, so I don't see a huge difference. But here is the finale with the ultra wide camera, and this was shot in 4K 30 frames per second, and I can see a slight lighting improvement on the iPhone 14, so let me know what you think and if you can tell a difference. I can't wait to put the iPhone 14's video up against the best that's on the market right now, so make sure that you subscribe so you don't miss any of those awesome camera comparisons coming. This is gonna be epic. So there it is, the iPhone 13 versus the 14. Let me know if you think it's worth the upgrade or not. I hope this video helped you make a buying decision. If you want my opinion, I think if you're happy with the iPhone 13 and you have no complaints, then you're good to keep it another year. Unless you want a bigger screen and better battery life, then upgrade to the iPhone 14 Plus. That makes a lot of sense if you don't want to go Pro. If you're looking for that instantly noticeable camera difference, you might not find that here, but I did want to show you that there are improvements in the camera. So let's say that if you're on an iPhone 10, 11, or maybe even a 12, I think it's worth upgrading to this year. But look at the phone as a whole to see if it's worth it. I wouldn't just look at the cameras alone.